appeared in my account. Now it's got its own dedicated
Okay.
page.
Cool.
They're selling t-shirts.
What's up, everybody?
33.
We're not talking about
Sinkholes.
or sinkholes
Yeah.
today.
It's about pinhole baby, it's like t-shirts.
Welcome back to midweek. For midweek, we're doing things a little different, but we're still gonna start with good news.
Originally $380.
You wouldn't want to disappoint them all.
No. I have no good
What
news.
prayer requests? You could do prayer requests as well.
I got a good news. 30 years ago on this day.
I saw that in the morning. and I
That's
was
okay. That's
It's
okay.
the, what do you call it? Golden birthday?
Golden birthday.
Golden
30 on
birthday. 30 on the 30th.
I missed, I was like, I remember having mine.
like, you're like,
Hey, yeah.
I didn't get an iPad, so I'm getting.
We were just saying that.
if you were here like how
Actually,
yeah.
thank you.
I know, I'm never.
Thank you for someone in the back to clear it up, thank you.
So, other good news?
What else came in the mail? I forgot.
Oh, good news.
Dude,
Yeah,
Exams,
They don't start till next week. You're fine.
okay. Her request, I'm on call.
So for exams, for being on call.
I had two yesterday, it was great.
So do we have any good news? Other than Beck's birthday?
No,
It's half over.
our book club was fun. That's it.
Our book club was fun.
Yeah.
Some characters in there.
Oh, he brought you dinner.
Go ahead. Liz.
Our old campus administrator in Pittsburgh that just got appointed, we got to see it. so
No, they got
basically-
anointed.
Our-
They should like to say that they got
rhymes.
anointed.
It rhymes.
Yeah. But now they're now running the church up in Pittsburgh, which is really cool. I mean, they've been doing that anyways. The old leaders up there like disappeared,
Yeah.
but they've basically been doing it even though they were never like appointed, so it's cool that they finally got recognized and we got to see it, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. James and Elena. Yeah, it was a good time. And the Evans came in from Philly. They lead one of the regions out there, but when I was in Philly, Walter obviously was there, so we got to see them and catch up with them a little bit, and so and we had a great Thanksgiving, you know?
Yeah.
We ate some stuff. I got to watch a lot of football. You know, you can't ask for a better Thanksgiving. Any other good news?
Tomorrow
Anybody
is my
online?
first day on my new job.
Got paid today.
Go ahead, Nico.
Tomorrow is the first day of my new job.
Hold on, is
Our
that?
car died.
Hold on.
Across the way. We had to sell it for a nickel.
You hear me?
And then she's like,
Yeah, now we can hear you. There you go. The computer was muted, so I was like,
oh, so
I was wondering why I didn't hear it, but anyway. Yeah, go for it, Nico.
Tomorrow is the first day of my new job, my new position.
Hey.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I just ordered a suit, another one, so.
Soup. You ordered some soup?
Yep.
That's exciting though. That's awesome. How do you feel about it? Is it like, are you anxious? Are you excited?
Yeah, all the above, anxious, excited, nervous, and just ready to dive in.
Yeah. I get that. There you go. Jacob's giving you a heart.
Oh, is that what that was? That was a bird. I kid. Kelsey's surgery went well. She had her 2 teeth extracted and she.
Ooh.
I didn't know that.
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
You just said, yeah. You just said Chelsea had her teeth. Yeah.
That poor girl.
She's back home then?
Yeah, it was an in and out thing.
Okay.
But thank you, Ruby and Pearl, for keeping her and the kids alive while I was at work.
Thank you, Ruby and Pearl. We'll
So long.
Tell them whenever we see them in person, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I have great news.
Tell me.
I got a banjo,
Hey,
right? I'm like,
that's kind of cool.
I know. I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, oh, it was a book club. They were like, we're introducing ourselves or whatever. I was like, yeah, like I'm not from here, but I got a banjo the other day. So now I feel like an official West Virginian.
Yeah.
Like,
As a West Virginian,
I don't know.
are you ready to come in then?
I wish I would.
I'll fake it.
Is it the friendly banjo?
The friendly, what?
I think
Yeah,
so.
there's like some new banjo that's like meant for kids and it's easy to play, but adults can play it very easily too.
No, I got like a full-on banjo.
Even better.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, cool, sweet. We're gonna dive into midweek then, because we got a lot to talk about. We are talking about conflict today. Yeah, we're gonna fight.
Okay, well, I call it.
Remember that.
That's my team.
Just put a little like, put that on like the back of your mind.
I
Remember
was
that.
on like the debate last year.
Yeah.
No, we're physically fighting.
I still.
So we're talking about conflict, and Charleston actually went through this series like 3 weeks ago, and they loved it. So what it is we're gonna watch 2 separate videos, one today, one next week, of this guy from the small church conference who walks through why conflict is important, how to handle it properly. He gives an entire framework for what a healthy conflict looks like. And the first part of it is all about why it's so important to handle conflict well and what happens when you don't handle it well and the repercussions of that. So before we dive in, I get 2 people to pray. Please, Jacob.
Sure. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for brothers and sisters in and not in this room. I pray for the lesson as we go through whatever we're going to go through with conflict. I pray that we can take it to heart and try to utilize it in our life and in a way that is constructive and that we can honor your name. It's in your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Dear God, thank you so much for letting us just all be here tonight. Even though it is stressful, not only being the holiday season, but being people's busy work seasons and also being finals week, there can just be a lot of temptation not to be here. But I'm so grateful that we're able to still worship you, and surgeries.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on, and there's just so many reasons for us not to, but I love that you have just still given us a place in the middle of the week that we can all join and kind of learn more about you and take time to worship you. And I pray that through these lessons that we can learn how to be in conflict with each other better, and we can learn how to initiate and resolve conflict. But I love you. Prayers on your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Cool. Let's see. I just want to make sure that the sound is up. Share sound. Cool. Sweet. So.
For those who don't know me, my name is David Jung. I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. Some people always ask, what state's that in? And I mean, it's in Canada. So what state is that? And I say, go away. But if you don't know where Winnipeg is, it's about 7 hours north of Minneapolis, and it's colder than Minneapolis. So I'm super hot down here. Anyway, thank you. I knew that was coming from Joel. I want to thank everybody for being here. Also, just great job, Kelsey. Great job, Joel. So full in the brain. I was like, goodness sake, I can't talk now because my brain's so full. But I heard it's been an amazing conference. And think of all the things that you learned. Think of all the things you want to go back and implement in your church. What if I were to tell you that all that is going to fall apart if you don't deal with conflict well? I'm not saying it's not the most important thing in the world, but I'm saying it's a thing. And so right now, I know that lots of people are expecting certain things, and you're coming in with a question. And so I say this for all the workshops that I do. Since the pandemic time, I work for a secular company. We've been doing lots and lots of workshops on Zoom. I've done over 350 on Zoom, anywhere between 45 minutes to 6 hours long. About 150 of them have to do with conflict resolution, mediation, and organizational health that results in bad conflict. So that's the secular world. So this is not just a church problem, it's a human problem. And as some people heard about this, COVID, it's a great incubator for depression, anxiety, getting stuck at home, fighting for Wi-Fi bandwidth and pets and people, like you didn't know how small your house was until everybody was there. And conflict. And even when people say, well, you gotta have work-life balance. Well, what if you're working from home? That's work and life. I mean, you always bring you, right? Do you ever have a bad day at work and you bring it home? And then we're ministers, like I've been a minister for 29 years and you bring it home. And so who you are is who you are in church and hopefully who you are at home as well. And so dealing with conflict was a huge story, and I'll tell you why. When you know this Exodus 18 passage, many people have preached this, and this is about God's people when they left Egypt. What a huge mess it was in Egypt, and God rescued them. And it wasn't for those who studied a little bit, it wasn't just Israelites that left. It was everybody who didn't want to be a slave. Everybody left, and you had a mixed bag of people. In 400 years, they learned some stuff, some good stuff and some bad stuff. And so the interesting thing was they got to the point where they were heading to Mount Sinai, and this is before they got the big 10 commandments, before they got the Levitical, before anything was set up. There was no structure. And all of a sudden, there was this moment when Moses was standing in front of these people day and night, literally dealing with conflict all day and night. Does that feel a little bit like you? I don't think he signed up for that. How many people signed up here for ministry to preach the word? Let's save people. Let's do all that. Yay! Amen. Overworked, underpaid a little bit, like whatever. It's just the way it is. And you want to do it all, but all of a sudden you find yourself in appointment after appointment. It's not just the same people, it's the same kinds of people. And they're just draining you. And then the younger people see this and they're like, oh, I totally want that. Nope. Like they don't want to be, I don't want to be in the ministry. Because a lot of it is not dealt with very well. And Moses, our brother, you can say, has dealt with the same problem, but day and night. And I'm not saying he was the only one, but what happened with him was he was in a pickle. He didn't know what to do. Do you ever feel that way? You're the only person who can deal with it? But here's it, sometimes you're not the only person that knows how to deal with it. People deal with this at work all the time. You're the only one that probably will deal with it. Because other people are like, no way, I'm not doing that. I have that at work, right? And I'm gonna pay you to fix that. And meanwhile, it's like, okay, I don't know what to do. And so here's a situation where somebody approached Moses and said, hey man, what you're doing is not good. Do you remember who that was? Jethro. That's right, his father-in-law. Anybody else know what other occupation that Jethro had? He's a witch. He's a big title. He's the priest of Midian. Do you think that was just an honorific title or just something he actually did? Pretty sure he was the priest of Midian. So what does that mean? You can't just claim with David the police officer. You can't do that. If you walked around, if you said you're a priest of Midian, like that's a thing. Why would God, and this is something you're gonna have to think about, why would God, before setting up the 10 commandments for these folks, why would God, before setting the Levitical priesthood, all the structure that Israel needed to do well, why would he have this situation here where Jethro would come in to instruct Moses and say, look, what you're doing is not good. Let me share some advice with you. Where did it come from? It came from what we would call in our vernacular a non-Christian. If it was me, I probably wouldn't have picked that guy first. But God picked that. And so sometimes I get some pushback on this stuff. And are you bringing this stuff in from the secular world? Yeah, it is from the secular world. But just like when you learn how to play the guitar, there's no ICOC school of guitar, right? No, there isn't. But yet we bring it in. We honor God with it. As Joel showed the spreadsheet with PowerPoint and Excel, that's not invented by a disciple. Anything good from the world that aligns with the Bible, we can bring in. Just like Jethro, there's some good stuff he brought in, and there's all that Midianite sacrifice stuff that you don't want to do. But the stuff he brought in was good. And so this is what he said to Moses. So Moses answered him, and you know this passage. This is not a leadership passage. This passage specifically says what's about. Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, okay, so right away it gives you a big clue. It's brought to me, and I decide between the parties, inform them of God's decrees and laws. Moses and the father-in-law replied, what you're doing is not good. You and these people who come, you only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. And as ministers, we have to deal with this all the time, and we say, amen. We can't handle it alone. We can't. No one here gets paid more to do that conflict stuff, but you got to do it, because if you don't, it burns down. You could have the most amazing couple, ministry potential, secular ministry, all kinds, but if they can't get over a hump in their marriage, with their kids, with their in-laws, at work, next thing you know, their life and home becomes toxic, and you don't know what it is. And you know what? I mean, I don't know if this sounds sacrilegious, but going to pray about it is one step, but it won't fix it. Sharing your faith is one of our, you can go share your faith, you won't fight so much at home. I beg to differ. I'm a marriage and family therapist. My main training is in mental health. I tell you, sharing your faith doesn't fix conflict resolution, because now you got to bring home the person you're studying the Bible and they're having a fight with your wife, and it's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like it doesn't, you know what I'm talking about, right? It doesn't fix it. How many times has a baptism or amazing stats fixed the conflict you're having with your children? It doesn't fix it. Somebody once said, we want kingdom happily ever after. What does that look like? We become disciples, we want our kids and as many people as possible. And when we're dealing with people that are in conflict and we're not dealing with it right, what happens is it becomes so problematic. This is what it starts to look like. It becomes an issue of us versus them. And that's how you know it becomes problematic. It's not the conflict. It's how we handle the conflict. God doesn't have an issue with conflict. You know, he meets Jacob and says, let's fight, let's wrestle. I mean, most parents are like, stop fighting. God goes, hey, listen, you back off. I'm trying to give this guy a blessing. When you fight right, you get a blessing. But if you fight wrong, like over some lentil soup and your brother, that could have some very bad stuff over the many years. It's not about the conflict. But when you have conflict that's turned bad, it looks like this. Us versus them. And what happens is conflict is not always sinful, but when you leave it long enough that people try to win, they're going to use sinful tools to win. You ever seen those sinful tools? Volume, underhandedness, gossip is a symptom of unresolved conflict. It's a way to meet needs. We're need-meeting beings, and sometimes in conflict, we want to win, and becomes us versus them, and it becomes very sinful. It hurts the growth of the church. And that's when evangelist ears and women's ministry, ooh, what, it hurts our growth? Yeah, really badly. Because can you imagine growing to a church a certain size, and all of a sudden it splits? You got to start all over again. You're like, what just happened? And it splits, and it causes culture issues. Because the culture that we can create is that we accept a certain level of conflict. That's so-and-so, you know, they're always fighting. What are you going to do? Like, what do you mean, what are you going to do? Moses had to figure that out, and they set up that structure before they gave out the Decalogue, before they gave out the Leviticus. They set it up beforehand, because I believe that if they didn't fix that right away and deal with it, they would never make it to the mountain. They just wouldn't make it. They'd be like bodies all the way through. Yeah, we lost 200 or 300 people. It doesn't matter. And we don't look at the problem. And so they were dealing with episode after episode after episode, but not dealing with the epicenter of what was really going on. And part of it was they were training people, allowing them to do this better. So would you want to learn how to do conflict better? I would, for sure. And so looking at this, you know, some of us have dealt with conflict. And one of my great famous lines I love from The Equalizer, the new version of it is, you know, there's pain that hurts and there's pain that alters. Right? Sometimes you don't deal with conflict. It's a pain that alters. And this is what it looks like. Somebody's approaching a church, like you see them, you feel them. And it may not even be that person, but it's someone like them. You hear like, hey bro, I want to talk to you about your sermon. You're totally stressed out. You're writing your sermon, you're putting things together, you're in a counseling appointment, you're shaping the appointment based on the person you're in conflict with. And it changes you. It's almost like, you know, you're like, I don't care what God says, I just don't want them to be mad at me, or upset with me, or attacking me. And it becomes problematic. And that's just interpersonal conflict. And sometimes you have church to church, right? Region to region. And you know, young people love hearing when their parents fight. No, they don't. They see that like, no way. Until we get our organizational culture healthy, eventually it's going to fail. It just will. It's not a matter of if, it's when it's going to fail. And we see this after time and time again. Now, some of us here, you know how to deal with conflict already. You do. And so this is something I like to show people. You have a what we call a conscious, perhaps, if you know how to do it, it's called a conscious competence. You know what you're doing, okay, and you're good at it. And amen, you want to be there. Amen, that's great. But here's the other side of it. You're consciously incompetent. You know you're no good at it. The other side of it is you're unconsciously competent. What does that mean? It means that you're good at it, but you don't know how to make it work. So you can't explain it to someone. Well, you just got to go in there and, pray about it and just, work it out, right? Isn't that part of the ICOC training? Just go lead a church and just trust God and go share your faith and, come on, bro, you know what to do. No, you don't. Look at all the stuff.
Amen.
So I entered the ministry 29 years ago, kind of thrown in. I mean, that's our system. But is there a way to do that better where, some people are unconsciously competent. Where here's the other side. This is the worst, though. It's unconsciously incompetent. That means you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know. Do you know that the person that's unconsciously incompetent is just as confident as a person that's consciously competent? Yeah, I got this, bro, is what it sounds like. That's all fun and games until you're parachuting, right? Oh man, I really didn't know how to do that. Yeah, well, you find out that sudden stop, right? Well, a lot of times people, you think you know how to deal with conflict, but you don't, because there's all the bodies lying everywhere. Today I wanted to kind of just think about two things for us, because I know you're going to start writing things furiously. Don't do that, because when through these workshops and all these times together, when everything's important, nothing's important. You're probably already full now. Like you're that ding, ding, I'm done. Like I have no more in there. So don't write it all down, because one, it's being recorded, and secondly, you're going to have access to something that we're creating throughout the ICOC called Conflict Dynamics. It's part of the ICOC Peacemakers program. If you've not heard about it, it's because it wasn't open to all the public yet, but it will be starting in January. So don't ask that. It's all going to be on there, so don't worry about that. But I don't want to see any pens smoking. Like, don't do that. I want you to think about something in your brain. What am I coming here to solve? If this was a math problem for your church, what are you trying to solve? Keep it narrow and see if we go throughout the time together, is it drawing closer to something that maybe is answering your question? Is it going to inform what you're going to ask? Because I know some people are going to come and ask me, bro, I got this problem. It's kind of like a problem. It's kind of like a problem. I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? Be clear, and then I can help. I can answer. I'm accessible. But here's the interesting thing. This conference, and many, many like it for the last many, many years of our movement, has been about going to make disciples. I mean, think about the systems. What Joel set up, it's a part of a system. The study series is part of a system of how to, Matthew 28, go make disciples. I love what Joel did. He took words, bear, and he expanded all these charts and QR codes and stuff. Think of all the conferences that have been focused on go. Think about it, right? We're talking, that's how many years of Christianity for us. I learned how to go before I could even go, right? Even during the Bible studies, you knew. When somebody said, hey, David's at the L&D study, oh, that should be hilarious. But you know what I'm talking about, right? But only people in the kingdom know what L&D is. And then somebody says, part 1 or part 2. Exactly. Depending where you're from. If we didn't have a study series to go to, it would be something like, we're kind of talking about, the sin, word, faith, purity, righteousness part. Like, what study is that? But you know exactly where to go, because we put words, we've codified the system that we use, and literally we're around the world because of it. Well, here's something interesting. Because when we think about conflict, this scripture has been used, I don't know how, 1,000,000 times. Look what it says. If your brother sins against you, see the word go? Go and show him his fault, just between the two of you. If he listens, you've won your brother over. This involves sisters too, of course. But if he will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter might be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses even to listen to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Right? Yeah, I was like, yeah, I've seen papers written on this, tons of stuff. Very theoretical. Here's my question. When we go make disciples, you can give me study series, interpretive dances, you can do whatever. There's so many things that I've seen that, so many ways to go, skits, all kinds of stuff. How many people have ever answered, how do you go? And show your brother. I bet you I interview 100 people and get 100 different answers. And so when somebody comes up, well, I really went to my brother, yeah, and then we assume we know what they mean. Gottman said this great therapist, the way a conversation starts is usually the way it's going to end. If I don't know what they're starting off, and I'm assuming, because John's a different personality than a Joel. He is. So when John says he goes, like, what does that mean? What does Joel mean by that? And when we assume, and we wonder why it's a mess, because we've mismatched expectations. You know, the first thing that I do when I walk into companies, I do workplace consultation. I gotta find out when they address the problem. I'm saying, what do you mean by that, address the problem? Yeah, you know, we just discipline them and, you know, whatever. A lot of times in our ministries, we don't have job descriptions that are super clear. We don't, because that's part of some of our history, and we, you know, and so part of dealing with conflict resolution sounds like this. If it's quiet, it's resolved. That's not how it works. I tell you, you have a way, if you think about your own family structure, how did they deal with conflict back in home? In my house, it was like who yelled the loudest won. It's the way it was. But when Dad left, oh, we'd fight. When we hear his footsteps coming back. So could you think that might translate into church? We call that family of origin issues, okay? I knew one sister, man, whenever there was a problem, she'd hand candies out. And the kids would stop fighting. You know what the kids figured out? If we fight, there's candy. Let me tell you what they picked up. They didn't pick up conflict resolution skills. They picked up cavities, maybe some diabetes. They didn't pick up anything. And they figured it out. So when somebody says go, and we have no definitive way. Now, this is what I like to do. I'm here to share tools, not rules. This is not a new way of doing things, but just consider the last time you went into a conversation and you didn't know how to go, well, most likely you had information from the way you dealt with in your family. So either you avoid it or you just go hard on it, or you might balance it out just right to a certain degree. But if there's no way to understand what you've done, then what happens is we have a lot of effort. If we have the wrong tools, you're not going to get results. So why is this class important to me? Because we want to be able to look at conflict resolution and to make it easy for people, for us to train people to tell us, hey, this is what I would do. These are some of the best practices for me, right? And so Jethro would have asked Moses to figure this out. He probably would have developed some system to train the people, except they didn't leave any notes. And I think it's partly, just like when the Bible says, go worship the Lord, it doesn't really leave us a lot of material. It doesn't give us musical notes or even instruments, how to play I don't even know what a zither is, you know, like a lyre, but whatever, right? We got all kinds of cool ways of doing that. But I'm thinking, what if we started to put something together that just works for us in the moment to make it explainable to the next person we're trying to train? You think people studying the Bible have conflict? I think so. See, as people who study the Bible, we know the main conflict they're trying to deal with is with them and God. And we have a very clear system with that. But we have very weak systems for them dealing with conflict with others. Yeah, but there's another conflict they have too. What about conflict with themselves? You ever disagree with yourself? Now, we have a whole mental health system to deal with that. But that middle piece, dealing with others, I know it's not out there because I wouldn't be half as busy as I am in the secular world if it was there. And you got to know, it's a lot of money to work on these things. Some conflicts have lasted for so long that in the beginning, you could put it out with a garden hose. You let it sit for a while, now it's a 5-alarm blaze, and sometimes the building's got to be burned down. There's nothing you can do about it. And we've seen that happen in our churches. Just look around. You hear rumors of war? Well, there's not rumors of war, there's war. Between our movements, and there's so many things that polarize us. It's not about the thing that polarizes us, it's about how we handle it, right? I am working in government projects right now in Manitoba, in parts of Canada too, on what we call them as COVID conversations. That's not a thing down here. Is there any COVID disputes? I'm just in Canada. But you have people that are pro, anti, this and this and this, splitting churches into 4 or 5 different sections. But I'm working with doctors and nurses where what's happening is they're getting threatened. And so you know what? They're leaving the communities because you just don't need doctors and nurses. They're leaving the community. What's going to happen to the community? And every other doctor that hears about it is like, we're not going there. They're crazy people over there. And so at the end of the day, you see that the same problems sometimes happen in our churches where why would you want to go to the ministry if eventually you're going to be in a situation where I don't know what to do when people approach me? Because every Sunday you're going to say something's not going to work for somebody, right? And somebody walks up and says something to you and you're like, man, you know, I don't know what to do because I wasn't trained. But then of course, all the young people we're trying to train. Can we make conflict resolution explainable to them? Can we explain it very clearly? Can we codify? Can we say, hey, you need to do the word study? Can we say that in such a way where, hey, did you do this part of the conflict resolution conversation? You know what, I'm going to go back and fix that. You know, right? As opposed to you want to have that conversation again and again and again, right? See, once it becomes explainable, it becomes transferable, right? Unless you want to be the full-time conflict person that you don't get paid extra for, right? Very few people, just because they have a t-shirt or a title, learn conflict resolution automatically. It's more complicated than you think. There is science behind it, there really is. It's just like somebody comes up and says, hey bro, I'll fix your brakes for you because I watched a couple of videos. Probably not, because I love my family. I want to see Jesus, but not just right yet, okay? Because I know they have to be certified electricians unless you want zzz, you know, all kind of stuff happening. In the same way, when we deal with conflict, if people don't deal with it right, I know I'm going to have to come back and say, oh my goodness, if you would have just left it, it would have been better than to go and try and do that. So at the end of the day, explainable, transferable, and the next thing you know, it's become sustainable. So you are actually planting, someone said this, you're planting seeds in whom shade you will never sit. They won't even remember who taught this stuff, but they keep going on and on. Because as you know, during that time when Moses and all the people were equipped, they dealt with conflict and they got to the mountain and everything was all good. And it went great after that from the Bible, right? Oh no, it didn't. Oh no, like what was Judges about? Did they forget everything? Yeah, apparently they did. They rolled the dice and went forward. Why don't we take out this tribe? Why don't we steal these women? Oh no, we stole too many. We stole too. Like what's going on? That is not. I don't think if those people did it the same way right before they went to Sinai, I don't think they would have made it. They wouldn't have made it. They did something. So today, I mean, I'm not saying here that we're going to stand here and revolutionize every single thing, but why don't we revolutionize today? Next month, dealing with some of this stuff. And you might be able to find this stuff useful right away. And so we want things to be transferable and sustainable. That's how we teach people this. And so this is something that I kind of put together with a hybrid of some of the workplace stuff I do, and they gave me permission to use it. You know what? It's not the most creative title, but you know how we go make disciples? Well, I'm calling this the Go Conversation. It's it. It's just call it that. What do you want to call it? It's not patented. You can take it. I mean, it's from the Bible, man. So here's the thing. It's inside the manual that you're going to get. Okay, it's a PDF manual. We created it to be usable on the iPhone 7. That's supposed to be the most ubiquitous phone on the planet. And we want this to get to every single village of every disciple, so that in the same way we get the discipleship study series, the whole thing to create disciples, or what Joel's put together, we want the same thing for conflict resolution. And you can add to it, take away from it, but some of the basic things are already there. And so I'll go through this at the second half of our class. But here's the thing, tools, not rules. You don't want to come out here, well, David said this is the only system we're using. We tried that before, okay? It's not going to work. I'm but a man. We're just introducing something, whatever works for your context, use it. If it doesn't work, find something better and let us know. That's all we care about, and we're going to evolve this. But here's the thing, what I found in the last 30 seconds I have before our break. We can bring in 1 million strategies. But what happens is someone said this great management consultant. He says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know what it means? It means to see that big Pac-Man. I don't know, some of you don't know what I'm talking about, but the old people that know Pac-Man, right? Look at all the things he's crunching and chomping. That culture is going to kill your change, kill your growth, kill your performance, kill your collaboration, kill your unity. It's going to kill it all. If that culture is, we're going to deal with conflict the way we've been dealing with it for the last 25 years, 30 years, it's not working. And if we don't change that, all the tools I'm going to give you is a waste of time. So why don't we take a 5-minute break? Think about what I'm saying about maybe reintegrating and thinking, maybe learning a new way. I'm going to show you a few steps of the new way. Amen? So 5 minutes.
I like listening to him.
He can't hear you. So.
I think he's I think you did a good job whenever you lowered, yeah, like moved full screen. I think he's a good speaker.
He is. He's a great speaker.
Yeah.
I like how he'll tell a joke and like have a completely straight face and you're like, That's a joke.
Yeah.
But it's like so dry humor that you're like, it's a joke.
Yeah. And so that's kind of setting the stage for next week. Next week, we'll get into like the actual practicals of, hey, here's how to handle it. This was more of like exposing the issue.
Yeah.
And the reality is to have healthy conflict, we have to be really self-aware. We have to know what we're feeling, what we have to be able to understand and read the other person and see, oh, they didn't like that. Right? There's a level of being aware of and knowing too how to attribute those things. Having a conversation, like an intense dialogue with somebody in the middle of fellowship at church, bad idea. They're gonna respond terribly because there are so many different stimuli going on. There are, so many things happening all at once. And so the two things that we have to look for are silence and violence. That when
Sorry. Sorry.
I stole that from a book, thank you. But in a conversation, in a conflict, there's a pool of shared meaning. That when people feel safe to contribute to the pool of shared meaning, that's where conversations actually go. We all understand this. We've had conflict that goes really well. And it's when we can contribute to the pool of shared meaning and can say, hey, well, this is what I thought was happening. And then the other person can say, well, this is what I was feeling when that happened. You go, oh, I didn't even think of that. And you can get resolved and you feel like people move forward, right? When we don't feel like we can contribute to that pool of shared meaning, when we feel threatened, we either go to silence or violence. Either people lash out and you see people, like we've all seen the person who like, somebody's like, hey, do your dishes. And they're like, you do your dishes, right? Like they throw stuff, they scream, like anything like that is violence in terms of a conversation. Or they go silent. They just shut down. There's no more communication. And you're trying to like, you're like, so how do you feel? And they're like, fine, I guess. And like, there's nothing there, right? And we all go to either silence or violence, depending on the person, depending on the conversation. Okay, reel it back in. We're still here.
Yeah.
We're talking about what you're talking about. Past it.
That's great. Talk about it later. But depending on the person that we're talking to, depending on the situation, like if we face somebody really hostile, we might go to silence more than violence, right? If we're talking to somebody who's really passive, we might go to violence more than like we all of those dynamics change whether or not we prefer silence or violence. But the reality is both of those things limit our ability to resolve conflict. Neither of those responses allow the conflict to move beyond, beyond it doesn't actually resolve it. And what happens is if people go to silence, it doesn't come out in what they say, it comes out in how they act. The book that I was referencing is written by psychologists, and they would go into workplaces and study the dynamics of these managers who have these conversations. And they found that people who didn't, no, it's Crucial Conversations. Great book. Come to book club, you'll read it.
Maybe.
Maybe. We don't cut it. But what they found is managers who, when people go to silence, what happens is they don't have these huge blow-ups, they don't have like their managers aren't fighting people in the workplace. What they have instead is the productivity tanks. I think they said 43% is the percentage drop in productivity when you have unresolved conflict that you went to silence. You said, you know what, we're gonna push that off, we're not gonna deal with that. 43%.
But violence, is there stuff on that?
I mean, usually that just explodes and somebody gets fired or something, you know,
Yeah.
something.
Place violence.
Usually violence leads to even worse results. Somebody gets.
Conflict is ignored. Kids come AK-47.
And we're back.
Sorry. That sounds terrible, but.
But, so those two things are really important, especially when you think about in the church, we're called to resolve our conflict. And so conflict, I mean, we've all seen, right, somebody who freaks out in the middle of service and you're like, what is that? Like, right, there's that person who's like super conflict prone and just wants to fight everybody. And everybody's on edge, right? Or it goes to silence and, you know,
Yes.
silence is like, I mean, that's why people ghost you. Right? That's why people ghost me when I text them, like, why people, I saw somebody the other day. Lacey was there.
Do you ask them when they ghost you? Are you like, hey, are you ghosting me?
No, I just continue to text them and they don't respond. But, I mean, Lacey saw the other day, like, I saw somebody that I recognized and I was like, hey, how you doing, whatever, and it was like, she was not comfortable with interacting anymore. Because there was conflict that went to silence. She didn't say anything and it just. You know, and so this is a super important topic and conversation we're having. And so a couple of discussion questions. One, are you conflict prone or conflict averse? Two, how do you handle conflict? And have you been trained in how to handle conflict? Three, what is our conflict? What do you think our conflict culture is within our region? What is your family of origin conflict culture? And then, do you go to silence or violence? Which way do you tend? So.
All answers depend on the situation and the people.
Well, then
Yeah,
answer them for
but
every single situation.
No. No. Wait,
Always, at both sides of the family, no one talks about anything, like, we just ignore us at Christmas. On my dad's side, like, no one would talk to us,
no,
it's like constant silence.
my dad, he'll fight you, like fight. And then it goes quiet for a day, and then we have a water fight, and we just ignore it. Real nice.
A water fight, like a balloon, like
No,
water.
It's violent and
no,
silent.
like, my brother got stitches. One day of silence, the next day I walk in and I get a bowl of water thrown at me, so then I grab water bottles. Then my stepmom grabs this water.
And you guys
hose,
are giggling though.
and we're like chasing each other around the house.
To be clear, you're giggling and laughing though.
No, literally,
At
it's
the
really
water.
fun, like, it was really
We
fun.
did that too.
What? Is this a normal thing?
My
Yeah.
family also did water fights. It wasn't after stitches, but we also did water fights.
It was, yeah.
I didn't know.
Aggressively or like playfully?
Playfully, like you grab like a cup of water and you chase each other around the house, or you grab like the hose off the sink and you just spray people.
It's hilarious.
Was that like the bookend to conflict like Ashley was talking about, or was it just for fun?
It's for fun.
I was gonna say, I was like, it'd be weird if both of your families had, it was like, yeah, we had conflict, you know, we got in fist fights, and then the way we resolved it was just a water fight afterwards.
No, but I mean, like, if I encounter people who have tendencies like that side of my family and we were to get in conflict, then I would approach it very differently than.
Yeah.
Like, conflict with you guys would be a lot softer than conflict with my mother's family
You wouldn't
or
slap
my
me?
father's.
Maybe Lacey.
No, honestly, like, I have different.
Yeah.
I'm a lot calmer and a lot like more pointed in what I'm saying to people that I don't think would be able to handle the toxicity. Familial anger.
Yeah, that makes sense for what you were saying. You were saying if somebody is less someone leans more towards silence. And you also lean more towards silence, it might change you, like if they're more of a silent person than you are,
Right.
then it might like, you might feel like you need to fill that role or something to like. I don't know,
Right.
move something in a direction,
You'll
because
become more
two
aggressive.
silent people, it's like, maybe, I'm not saying that never
Just
happens.
stare at each other.
Yeah, it
Or
could
you
happen,
walk
but
away.
like, yeah, I feel like I lean more towards silence,
Yeah.
but I think,
Don't get in conflict with me.
Well, no,
I will, yeah, which the,
But it also depends on what you're arguing about. All of this is like very dependent on the circumstances
yeah,
and situations.
yeah.
Because if you're more passionate about the issue than she is, you could be a silent person more most of the time. But in this situation,
that's what I'd say,
you want
yeah,
her to have a reaction to what you're saying.
sure, yeah.
So it would be all weird.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah.
Like, Lord, say something.
Yeah,
well, it does depend, like a lot of, but I think most people have a tendency towards one or the other. Do you guys have any thoughts about just the video in general? Reactions to it?
My biggest takeaway, is said a couple of times, that I think I'll try to chew on is, it isn't the conflict itself, it's how it's handled.
Hmm.
I feel like that's a important thing to
Yeah.
remember is, there's a lot of things in the Bible, it's like you don't think there are things in the Bible, but there actually are. Yeah, there's like these preconceived notions that our culture kind of, we carry with us. But there is things in the Bible and it is viewed good, like it is okay to be in conflict with somebody. Like that's not something that comes to mind automatically
Yeah.
whenever I think of conflict. Conflict, oh, Bible, like,
Right.
that's not something that I just go to immediately. So, yeah, I like that.
Go for it, Liz.
I like when he said, that he quoted that one guy who said, how you come into the conversation is usually how you're gonna leave it.
Mm,
And I like that. I am conflict prone, or I jump into conflict. I don't like I grew up in a household that, like, it was fine to fight and like we got over things pretty easily. But when we fought, like it was like go for the throat, like first one to cry is the loser, like all that kind of, like it wasn't.
Is that how your relationship is? I kind of want to know.
Working on it.
Oh, no.
But like, that was just how we grew up, so like, I'm fine with having conflict and I don't I see conflict as healthy, like I never, like if I have a problem with someone, like I'm usually gonna say it.
Yeah.
Cause I'd rather say it than not have it resolved, cause I'm never gonna I can't like walk away from something if it's unresolved, like I need to tell
Yeah.
someone. It's more so learning how to, that quote resonated with me, cause it's true, like. I know, like, every time my dad has an issue with us, like, he'll come in with like a very aggressive tone. It's like, why are you yelling at me? Like, this doesn't need to be like that, and I feel like automatically conflict in my head, I'm like, oh. I need to win, so like, I gotta come in guns blazing, and then I expect it to work. And then I'm like, oh no. Yeah, and I'm like, oh no, so I think I'm not silent, I'm the violence.
In my family, like my mom would get like really mad a lot of the time, but it didn't matter anything what I said. Like, it wasn't gonna, like, we weren't gonna come to an understanding, she would just continue to like escalate and escalate. So at a certain point, it's like, when you fight every single day, why put any more energy into it whenever you're not gonna get anywhere?
Right.
So I've learned to just like shut my mouth and let her say whatever she wants to say and move on from
Just do
it.
what I do and block them for a few months. I blocked my dad.
Unhealthy conflicts,
Yeah,
unhealthy conflicts.
I blocked my father for 3 months, and when I unblocked him and told my sister he's unblocked, he texted, sorry, but I wrote you. Yeah, I don't
Didn't speak to me.
Boundaries are okay to have.
That's still not helpful.
I have a question.
What's your question?
So
I was gonna say that.
I am currently watching workplace conflict happen on my phone. my friend Jamie put a group message together and she put up decorations in the office and she's like, everybody can do it. So then she added in the wrong girl and she was like, don't know y'all, but that's great. So then the other girl that does work with us was like, can someone please remove me from this group message? And Jamie's like, I don't know how to do that, so you can block me. So then she texts me sideways, like on the other side, like on just us, and said, I blocked her. F her. I was trying to be nice. And I don't know how to fix this. Because Jamie is very.
Block all of them right now.
I don't think they know that you can use.
Really just go to it and hide alerts. Because now she's like, no, I tried to mute it, but it keeps going off constantly. Like it's gonna be a problem.
Cut your ties.
It's not gonna be
Cut
a
your
problem.
ties.
It's gonna be a problem because Jamie's already cussed out one of our other coworkers in the office.
Yeah, this is not.
Right over,
Yeah.
right where you hold it down.
These are all
Yeah.
35.
Sorry, I didn't. My text message.
That's also just a point. This is not your problem. This is her problem. You're talking about being in conflict.
As answering that last question, I mean, you know, obviously as the answer, but I think as a group and everything,
Yeah.
I feel like we, are definitely a silent.
Silence group.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, I'm just ready to go.
The people that she has conflict with, she says, you. She's fine. So,
No, I just feel, I mean, it makes sense, everyone here kind of, I don't know, but I feel like Garrett's not really a violence. Are you a violence man?
It's fun. I didn't even hear it. I'm sitting by.
I don't know him and Abby.
You have.
Him and Abby definitely have.
You got it. Yeah. Who's signing?
Yeah, but that's like, there's a difference, like for talk, or do you like?
Oh, okay.
You guys are in like a neck show. You're
Do you
holding her, like,
yell
ever.
Yeah, like.
But that's
But, like,
familial
you raise your
conflict.
voice. Conflict.
But that's how
So,
it's
like-
different than how you'll argue with somebody who can't get away from
That's
you.
still conflict, though.
It's-
And if it's,
right.
if you, that's how you conflict with someone, anyone like gets close to you after that, you're probably gonna have conflict with them that way. That's how you're
Right.
used to.
Yes, inherently, like conflict with your family, you're gonna handle it differently than conflict with some random person on the street that
Yeah.
comes and screams.
I know, geez, I
But, like, we are called to be a family. We're called God's children. If we're
Want me to
meant to,
argue with you like I argue with my family?
I want you to
What I'm
control
saying- what I'm saying is that if we're all being grafted into this family, but we all have different understandings of what is healthy conflict.
Mhm.
Probably 95% of it is unhealthy conflict that we all come in. And so as we develop closer and closer friendships and closer bonds, all of a sudden, those different understandings of conflict butt up against each other. And so it creates unresolved conflict that then 5 years down the road, you're like, I hate that person. I can't remember why, but I don't want to see them at church. And that may sound like hyperbole, but
Well, that probably happened.
those are the things that happen.
Because I'm like getting paid at work, when people call me and they're complaining, like I had this lady literally yell at me for 10 minutes. I could handle conflict with her because I was getting paid to do it.
That's true.
And I was like I had to handle the situation. But like if it's on my own, if that lady like for some reason decided to yell at me anywhere else, I would not engage at all. But because it was at work and it was at a place where I had to handle it, I did handle it.
Yeah, we all have different hats.
To answer your question, no, we are not gonna pay people to handle conflict. We don't have the money for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I fill a role, like I said, wear hats, and you got different hats based on who you're interacting with. Yeah, I'm probably a little, I'm not quite silent, I'm not quite violent, I'm just violent.
I'm fine.
So has anybody been trained in how to handle conflict?
Just reading a book called How to
No, I
Talk
just have a
About Hard
question.
Things.
Ready for conflict?
How to talk about hard things and what we write for our book club.
Oh, wasn't it the one that like they literally just referenced everybody else?
Yeah.
I listened to one chapter and I was like, what is this?
No original thoughts, just, I have a friend. I have a good colleague.
So is that, Jacob, you've been trained in how to handle conflict?
No, dude, that was a joke.
I'm interested, Miko, have you been trained in how to handle conflict?
Been trained in righteousness.
Yeah.
It's a manager.
You just give them a cookie. Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about parenting. Never mind. Yeah, I mean, at work I've been trained.
You're a psychologist.
Yeah, that's what
Miko, what are you? Are you
Yeah.
Am I what?
silent or violent?
Am I silent or violent? Chelsea says I'm silent.
What are you, Chelsea?
Really?
Silent.
You're violent?
Silent. I shut down.
So I wonder, are you?
But I tend to go, the way that we handle conflict in my family was, everybody would like. You would adjust small, you would be passive aggressive until it built up, and then we would laugh out. And so it was like, being, initially would go to silence, not talk about it, and eventually it would lead to us beating each other in the living room or something like that, so.
See, like mine was very different from my sister. So like my sister was very violent. So they would get in like fights all the time, but I would just sit there and be like.
Yeah.
Come on.
And a lot of the way that we handle conflict, it's a coping mechanism. We develop our understanding of how to handle conflict, one, by what we see modeled, but two, in order to cope with our environment. So when you have two violent people who clash with each other, naturally it makes sense to then be the silent one.
Okay,
and
this
say,
is
okay.
TMI on my family, but there is this one fight that my dad and brother were in a couple years ago. And they literally got into a physical altercation, and on the way down to the ground, my dad's head banged off against a brick wall and he went unconscious. He literally could not remember the fight, like didn't think of the end, it's like that was how hard his head, and then like a day later, they were like, partner. But that's like, that's what I think about when I think of two violent people, I'm like.
He felt like he lost the fight.
They would fight in the back or when the dog would get involved and they
Good
would.
job.
No, literally like my mom trained the dog because they would get fights all the time. And then like when they got in fights, my mom would end up like pulling my sister's hair out and they would like have like physical, your sister would sick the dog on her. Yeah, and then my sister would run and we would see her for a few days. It was, yeah.
Honestly,
I was the one that called my girl.
they are.
And so,
Yeah.
so this is, bring it back in. We're back. Back.
Are we?
We're back.
No, we're.
So. So, as we can clearly see, this is something that's important for us to talk about. Because just like he was saying with the Bible studies, we have very specific, we have a clear progression with how we talk about things, and it helps us to address people's hearts. And so the goal is that we have that with conflict, that we're able to, rather than having one person, the Bartolis, who resolve all our conflict, we are all equipped to be able to resolve not only our own conflict, but help each other resolve conflict and say, okay, well, did you do this step of like, oh, this is where that's breaking down. Like you get to step 3 and then you say, Jesus, take the wheel. Like you have to go all the way through. And so We will watch the second part of that video next week. And then we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about it next week and the week after, because I have a feeling we're gonna need some time to unpack it a little bit. So in terms of announcements, we have church this Sunday is here in Huntington. It is our last service in Huntington for
Ever?
the year.
Wow.
Okay.
See you. We can do all the jokes, like, I'll see you then.
Yes,
It's
you
been
can do
last
all
year.
of the jokes.
Yeah.
So we will be downstairs at 10:30 in room 154 Smith Hall. We will have coffee. We will have all sorts of stuff.
So then what happens on the third week of December?
So jumping the shark. So next week, we'll have midweek right back here. Woo-hoo. Next week, the 11th is the church Christmas party. So we'll have service out there. After the service, we'll stay, we'll have food, we'll kind of watch the Christmas party videos. Jacob, you got mine, right? Ours.
I got most.
Mandy posted a food sign up sheet.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Okay.
Yes, there's a food sign up. It's like breakfast food, kind of lighter stuff. So that is the 11th, the 18th, then we'll be back in Charleston again because it's our candlelight service. And so we'll turn all the lights off, we'll light candles, we'll sing Christmas songs,
It's so much fun.
all this stuff.
Are there any Christmas songs I need to like learn?
No,
I'm
we'll
not
have,
good at songs.
we'll have all the lyrics and stuff. It'll
I'm
be like
really
normal.
not.
It's all like it's like
I'm still-
Silent Night and the classic. So that is the 18th. The week after that is Christmas. So we'll be virtually, we won't be here. So we're not gonna be here. So we'll join Charleston virtually for the 25th and for January 1st as well. Because again, we're not gonna be here. So and I think next week will probably be our last midweek in person, well, at least here, because the university shuts down. So we'll probably find we will definitely find
It's different from Monday. They don't let you still use it.
I don't think we
Over
can,
break?
I don't think we can reserve rooms while classes are in session, but
We
So-
can reserve one of those pickleball rooms in the rack, and we can
Please
sit
don't
and
do that.
powwow.
About conflict, it'll get loud.
if we get desperate, we'll do it.
But I mean, it's soundproof.
But we'll figure out,
We can yell.
we will figure out what we're doing next week and we'll announce it, whatever. Other announcements?
Movie night at the Portillo's on Saturday. Christmas movie night. And I think they said Spirited
What time?
with
Is
the
it the
Will
new-
Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
Hmm.
pretty good.
Oh, is that the new one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can we watch Spirited Away instead?
Yeah.
Which one's
The
that?
horse movie?
That was what I
Oh.
was gonna
Spirit, that's Spirit Stallion.
Actually, also singing
Spirited
on
Away.
Friday.
Singing?
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Actually, Friday at
Yes.
what's the bar called?
It's called, what's the bar called?
Me and Sean are going around. You go,
Yeah, the cellar door.
you're going at 8:30.
I have to go, I actually did.
That's the door of the.
I have to go.
Friday night?
Yep.
Speakeasy night.
I went to an open mic night and I got trapped. And then she was like, you wanna do this casually every Saturday? I said, go, that sounds like a job.
Yeah, it does sound like a job.
I have many of those.
So that's at 8:30?
It starts at 9.
9.
I'm not doing nothing till 9 because I need to get my life. together. I'm still learning there.
Yes, so Ashley singing at 9 o'clock, cellar door, be there, be square. Do you have the password for that?
No, that's bad. Because I would need to know.
Yeah. we sent it.
Okay, so are we about
Yeah. Anyway, we'll play the video later. The last thing is, we have a really exciting announcement.
She's pregnant?
I was gonna jokingly say it, but.
But Ashley was.
Are you?
Cool. For those who are in person.
Yeah.
You got cheesecake.
Oh,
Yeah. Right? As long as clean with it, so don't get it all over the place.
Thank
But,
God you were born.
yeah, that's midweek. We'll see you guys next week.